What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Heading into this holiday season, a certain franchise is returning to Nintendo for the first time in a long time, since the Wii U days, with the Switch 2, of course, getting Call of Duty. And in fact, it looks like you'll be able to play the game for free starting next month, and we'll go over that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about some new statistics that have been divulged, and unfortunately doesn't paint a great picture for physical media with Sony, and shows there really might be dozens of us. Although a lot of people got very motivated recently, so maybe that's part of it. We'll take a look at that. And then we'll also be going over what looks like a hardware flaw that Sony is working to fix with the PlayStation 5, probably because it's gonna be a long cross-gen period. We'll go over all of that and more. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button. Helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And of course, members for the channel do get Newswave early. If you would like to learn more about that, click the join button or link in the description down below. And we're gonna start today with The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time Remake, Reimagining, Reborn. There are still a lot of questions around what to expect from this new iteration of the legendary game, and we're getting like breadcrumbs here and there. I know the whole thing around the Google listing for SEO didn't really pan out how people were necessarily hoping, because it was, oh, August 4th. Well, that's soon. Not necessarily the case, but we do have this, we can see. And this is over with Genki on their social media account, saying The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time remake page in Nintendo Summer Catalog. The slogan, Reborn Across Time. Oh, I'm telling you guys, I have a feeling this isn't. So people have talked about the pricing around this thing. There's a $6 price getting thrown around. I think this is going to be a 70-80, like a 70 digital, 80 physical, and there'll be some kind of, they should be, if they were smart, gold cartridge special edition, because I think when they see Reborn, it's going to be more than just like a remaster, even like a one-to-one remake. I think they're going to take some liberties with this game. And I'd actually prefer that, honestly, because we have the original. I'd be curious to see what Nintendo could do now with all the new technology and with the Switch 2 with that game, even rebuilding parts of it and restructuring. I'm curious. So again, little breadcrumbs, but you gotta assume they're going to start talking here at some point, considering I think the game's coming out in November, and we're almost in August, so it's not that far away. Also, it looks like a new update for Ghost Recon Wildlands is on the way. This was an image that was posted over on Reddit as it appeared on like the Xbox dashboard when you first started up. And while it looks like some new content with the definitive edition, it also seems that there's a 60 FPS and 4K upgrade. So that obviously very, very nice there for a game that, I mean, years and years old now, dating back to the Xbox One and the PS4. And then the Ghost Recon official account decided to respond to all this going on, saying, "It's been a while, Ghost. We know some of you who saw some updates. We'll have more to say on the 6th of August when we celebrate the 25th anniversary of Ghost Recon. Intel coming soon." So some were hoping that there could also be a look at a new Ghost Recon game. I don't think that's necessarily off the table. They could absolutely do that and also push out an update for Ghost Recon Wildlands, along with a definitive edition, new content and stuff. So Ghost Recon fans, I would keep an eye out for that first week of August, because let's face it, it's Ubisoft, and stuff will probably just leak out early anyway. Oh, and we have some nostalgia here on deck for you guys when it comes to Final Fantasy, because there is a trailer that was released. There's the video for the 25th anniversary of Final Fantasy X. That's right, 25 years. It definitely makes you feel old for that one. It came out July 19th, 2001 in Japan, and we didn't get it in the US until like a week before Christmas, which is very, very weird to think about that, like December 18th release timing now. Even weirder then, because you would have had to have gone out to the store to get it just ahead of Christmas time and get that wrapped or gifted or what have you then. So you're kind of racing against the clock there, but still, it was really cool with the nostalgia to see that. I'd actually been playing through Final Fantasy X again recently because of this big 25th anniversary. I was hoping Square would have more for this, although they're talking about merchandise and crossovers. You have Tidus and Final Fantasy Resonance, so that's cool. Honestly, I was hoping to see more with the actual Final Fantasy X game itself, whether it's maybe like a more of like a remake treatment for it. I know it's already been re-released multiple times, also coming to the Switch 2 version and stuff, but I don't know, just something really to celebrate that anniversary, taking the game maybe to the next level and releasing on current systems with a bit of a touch-up and upgrade, but I guess they can always surprise us. I'm just not necessarily expecting it at this point. Still, the video was a nice touch. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Call of Duty Modern Warfare 4. We are heading towards its release October 23rd, but ahead of that, as we've seen basically every time with Call of Duty, there is some sort of beta period, whether it's closed for pre-order customers or open beta on multiple different platforms. So I was really hoping to see it for the Switch too, because as I mentioned, you have to go all the way back to the Wii U era. For the last time Call of Duty was on a Nintendo platform, they skipped the entirety of the Switch 1 generation. And then I guess if you want to go all the way back to like handheld Call of Duty, it would be declassified on the Vita then, right? So there's a lot of things happening here with Call of Duty going to the Switch 2, and it seems like we're gonna be able to try it out next month for free. So we can see this. Now this is the card that they put out. We can see detailed here over on Nintendo Life. You can pre-order and get beta early access. Now the early access period, August 21st to August 25th, okay? Platforms Xbox Series X, S, and PlayStation 5 with PC. And that's if you do like the pre-order and setup and stuff there. My thing with that though is, of course, I'm right now, for the most part, I'm curious how this thing's gonna run on the Switch 2. So I first saw the early access thing, I was like, okay, that's a shame, no Switch 2. But then, open beta, August 28th to September 1st, the Switch 2 will be part of that. So odd, I guess, that it's not part of that early access, but they're rolling it into the open beta, because pre-orders will just be kicking off starting August 26th for it. And from there, we'll see how this thing is going to run with the open beta period. And I mean, it's going to be interesting one way or the other to see Call of Duty on the Switch 2, because this is going to be something that should be consistent year over year. And we know they trade off studios as they go along. So we'll have Modern Warfare 4, and then I mean, let's face it, they say they're not going to do the Modern Warfare Black Ops and that treatment. I assume next year will be something completely different, somewhat different, but we should now expect each year there to be a Switch 2 logo next to the PlayStation 5, the Xbox Series, and the PC, and probably soon enough, a PS6 logo and a Helix logo, and it's going to get pretty crowded up there with that. But I'm so interested to see how all this works out with the Switch 2. Mouse mode, that being a thing, even the fact that a microphone is built in directly onto the Switch 2, kind of similar to the PS5, where that has a microphone built in, and you can get some unfortunate side effects where people don't even realize the microphone is on and live at the time, and it's just a very noisy lobby. But with all of that said, I mean, crossplay is going to be an interesting time to see how all this runs on the Switch 2, and we'll be able to try it out for free next month. So a month from now, I'll be jumping in, giving some of my impressions on it, and we'll see how it works out. Next up, let's talk about Sony and the online backlash they're facing over physical media apparently going away post-January 2028, as they announced 3 weeks ago now. And it seems like Sony is just full speed ahead. It does look like they're just going to try to bulldoze this whole thing online, and it's, you know what, a lot of the stats that have been coming out around physical media, it definitely shows why Sony believes that they can bulldoze this whole thing. And not only just their own numbers where they've said, oh yeah, it's 85% digital at this time, even though there are things included when it comes to like sales and purchases in games that do not have a physical copy, that sort of thing. So I still think there are a lot of questions around this situation with physical versus digital on Sony's platform. But when you see things like this is over on Blue Sky from Matt Piscatella, saying 2 PlayStation video games sold more than 10,000 physical units in the US during week ending July 11th, 2026. Seven games have sold more than 100,000 physicals units year to date. So that is not just, PlayStation first party games. Okay, this is like everything. Now, it is important to note, this is in the US specifically. That's what Circana, with their retail tracking covers, is the US. So everything outside the US, not really comparable here. I have a feeling the US is probably one of the more digital regions outright. But 7 games sold more than 100,000 physical units year to date. Now, people were going through and making lists of the different games. I mean, just off the top of my head, I know Crimson Desert sold 6 million, 007 First Light 3 million, Resident Evil 9 worked its way up to 6 million. So there's 3 big releases there that I would have to assume is part of the 100,000 club there. I mean, it's Again, it's not great when it's like, oh, it's not like, oh, 7 games did 1 million units physically. No, we're like in the 100,000 range for that, okay? And then there's like MLB The Show, Lego Batman, WWE 2K26, Call of Duty Black Ops 7. Yes, you do have spillover from last year for Call of Duty into 2026. The point here is, though, as I think we've kind of understood, physical media is like the minority share of sales. It's majority digital. I don't think anyone's necessarily disputing that. What people are trying to figure out right now is, okay, how small is the slice of the pie for physical media versus digital? And again, this is technically just one region with the US, but it's also PlayStation's largest region. So yeah, a lot of their decisions are going to be weighed more so towards what does the US market see and think with this. And I mean, it's pretty clear that, yes, it is a lot of digital purchasing going on. And you know what's funny? I think people have become just more motivated now, obviously, because they're being told that something's being taken away when it comes to choice in the marketplace. Even if you're all digital, that's not necessarily going to sit right with you if you really think about the implications when it comes to total market control by one entity with the PlayStation Store. But as I mentioned, there's extra motivation because of that recent announcement, and I've kind of noticed this in real time, just real quick. I do some of those YouTube shorts. I've been doing it for a few years now, where I'll just get a game and I'll do like a minute or two unboxing. And at first when I was doing them, and actually for a while there, people would just say, I don't get it. Why are you opening up the game and showing off the disc inside? Sometimes cool things would be in there, reverse cover art. Occasionally there'd be like a little pamphlet in there. Sometimes some extra things like the slip cover or steelbook case. But I understand for the most part, it's me going, hey, look, there's a disc inside. Wow. But it's still kind of the experience and I think the fun factor. But in the recent few weeks, comments have shifted a little bit and they're going, wow, this is great. Keep up the good work. You need to do more of these. It's like, oh, wow, their sentiment has really changed. So what I'm trying to say is previous sales, I think people weren't even really considering it. And yes, they are more digital, but maybe they've become more motivated to buy physical games. And my thought now is, what would Wolverine look like? That's the one thing I'm really curious on now, as people have this in their mind. When Wolverine releases, what is the physical to digital split? And that's something I wouldn't mind Matt Piscatella over at Circana sharing with us in a roundabout way that he tends to do, because he can't give specific hard numbers. What's the physical to digital split within 5%? You know, something like that. Is it 35-65? Is it 30-70? Like so that's where I am with it. Because if it ends up going 40-60, I'll be like, hold on a minute. Maybe physical media does actually have a shot at this, but that's the thing. We need to get one of those big releases and see how we fare there with the physical sales. We also have some unfortunate news when it comes to just going in a retail store and buying physical games. That's going to be more and more of a difficult thing, by the way, going forward, because like we can see, this is over on Game Reactor saying the UK and Ireland-based companies recently went through a period of closing down most of its stores, that being Game, around the country. And despite investment and plans to adjust its business to adapt to shifting consumer habits, Game has now fallen under administration. An additional time after doing so in 2011, so they've been here before, as per the Herald Scotland. However, it said that Game currently owes $15.8 million as well, suggesting any rescue would be a pricey and risky affair, and it does not sound like there's much confidence with the administration after they put out a comment about this. It kind of seems like they are there to figure out what they can sell off to try to pay back any of the creditors that are currently owed millions and millions of dollars. So yes, you hear about less physical media. I mean, 7 games selling 100,000 year to date in the US, and then over in the UK here with Game shutting down to the point where they are basically insolvent. GameStop saying that games aren't a core part of their business anymore. It's times are changing, and there probably really are dozens of us at this point. Next up, let's talk about a rating that's popped up online for the Switch 2, which we can see it is indeed Stellar Blade. Now, of course, this coming from Shift Up, and they've been working to move Stellar Blade to multiple different platforms at this point. So they had already announced that it was coming to the Switch 2. Obviously, we saw it in the recent director event that happened there. So Not shocking, but with this rating, it tells me that yes, we're getting closer to it releasing, and we're still waiting for that information. And they could honestly just drop it at any point in time online. I don't think it needs to show up in another direct or anything like that. So this is another one I'm kind of curious to see how it'll do on the Switch 2 system. And I figure Shift Up will continue moving Stellar Blade everywhere they can, right? So they'll probably put it on Xbox, and maybe they can get it on mobile phones. I've thought about that, although it is like an action game, and it's like, it's kind of a weird one to try to then translate over to touch controls. But with the Switch 2, it being the portable system with the Joy-Cons, I think it's going to adapt pretty well, at least to the Switch 2 system. I think the audience will actually do very well there, but I am curious as well about a physical release. Go figure. Would it be the game keycard approach, or with how we're seeing more and more cartridges released with the full game on it, would they be willing to say, you know what, we will go for that physical media with the game fully there? Maybe they'll do a fun little edition where it has a slipcover, because now part of the advertising for these games, I've been noticing this, by the way. Oh, there will be a disc version. Oh, there will be a cartridge. Like, this is something I see getting highlighted more and more, especially recently with what's happened with Sony. It just seems like an easy win. So I'd like to see Shift Up maybe make that attempt and say, yeah, all in the cartridge. It's a big release, a big deal. And honestly, I think then the Switch audience will absolutely show up for it. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about a patent that was discovered from Sony that appears to be trying to solve a problem when it comes to cooling the PlayStation 5, specifically in a certain orientation when you have the system set up. So you can have it, of course, horizontally with the little stand, or you can have it vertically. And so if you have it vertically, there is a chance for, over time, the liquid metal inside to kind of set at a different angle, and you'll have dry spots that appear. And we can see, now this is part of the patent here for electronic device, and it actually shows the PlayStation 5 heatsink, but it seems like an amendment, an update as part of this is focusing in specifically on like the vapor chamber for those different heat pipes, that heatsink, working to try to make it so that it's not uneven when it is working to cool that chip. And I think what we're going to see is Sony just work out, because we've already seen this with Sony before, with previous iterations of these are like silent revisions for the PlayStation 5. Remember, people were like weighing the thing and they found, oh wow, this one's actually quite a bit lighter than the launch one. They open it up and find out that the heatsink's been cut down dramatically. And I think what you'll see is, as they've kind of carved out different ridges and things on the opposite side of the heatsink pad that makes contact with the chip, I think they're also going to play around with that a bit more with the liquid metal distribution, as that's, I think, the biggest part they have to figure out, because when, yes, it is vertical and you have liquid metal, it will still kind of move around a bit. Now, it's not like a laptop, because there are some laptops that attempted, I think Asus did this, where they have liquid metal on it and like you're moving this thing all over the place. But the PS5 still being in a vertical orientation and setup, it'll still just have gravity work against it, and you can end up with spots underneath that heatsink connecting to the chip that is not making proper contact, and you can have the system get hotter than it should be, or just have outright failures from overheating. So this, just to me, it might not be the exact method that they're going to use. It just tells me that they are still thinking about this and could end up translating over to maybe the PlayStation 6 down the road. As, I mean, this is their first real outing with liquid metal for this generation. And I think for the most part, the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series, they're built well. Like, this is a generation where, like, I've thought about with the PS4 and the PS3, or even on the Microsoft side, the Xbox One and the Xbox 360, this has been a generation where I think I've seen the least complaints about the hardware in terms of reliability or noise, anything like that. So I feel like we are to the point where we are, I don't say splitting hairs, but we're really getting into the weeds for things that they can work to improve on the system, as they like to do that throughout the generation so that they can then launch the next generation with all kinds of R&D that they've done this whole way. So I still think there might be another revision for the PS5 in the cards, as this is probably going to be a long cross-generation period for the PS5 and the PS6. And yes, I do think Sony wants to work to get the PS5 cheaper, if at all possible. And part of that might be removing some materials here, shrinking down parts of the fabrication, or whatever else they can do to probably, at this time, keep it at $600, because those RAM prices, they're not getting any more manageable as we go along. And before we go to the comment of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, if you have a PS5, how is it set up? Okay, we have vertical and horizontal, and It is a dead split. Wait, is it a little more horizontal? It might, maybe. I mean, it says it's 50-50. That's pretty good. Wow. I'm actually kind of impressed. I mean, that's on 20,000 votes at the time of this recording. I have mine horizontal though. I have the little, for the PlayStation 5 Pro, I have the tiny little, it's like the pizza stand thing underneath of it. You know what I'm talking about, the little table thing almost, like the little piece of plastic holding up, which sounds crazy for what has now become a $900 system. Actually ended up being a pretty good investment at launch somehow on that one. But the thing is, I keep it horizontal, and honestly, it's just because it sets up better in the entertainment center. I've never really thought about, oh, it can't be vertical because of the liquid metal, but that is a legitimate concern that I see people have. So either way, I mean, I also think it just looks a little bit better in the horizontal setting, and it makes it pretty easy to know which way the disc is. But remember, that was a whole thing when the system first came out, like which way is up for the disc, and then people just pop it in a couple of times to figure it out. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Lilysar, who says, the last thing Sony needs to pair with a $1,000 PS6 is a $300 controller. Actually, funny enough, when they get to a position where they are selling to the most affluent households, it actually would make sense for them to make a $300 controller, because they probably assume if you're someone who's willing to spend $1,000, $1,200 on a system, and then buying PlayStation Plus, and then buying games, you might be interested in the $300 controller because that's just how you have it. You know, like that's just your household is well off and you can afford all this stuff. And unfortunately, that kind of feels like the direction that gaming is going in right now, because these systems are only getting more and more expensive. And I miss the days where some of these companies would try to really rack their brains and figure out ways to cut down costs. And sure, maybe they release a system that's kind of junk. You could tell, you're like, it was not built as nicely as the launch PlayStation 3 when you see the little sliding door PS3 Super Slim, but it's also $160 or something, just with 160 GB hard drive. It's like, okay, yeah, but it is a lot cheaper. So I wouldn't mind seeing these companies try to figure that out, but when it comes down to the core components necessary, specifically the RAM, the solid state storage, it becomes pretty difficult to design around that, because they're kind of needed for the thing to even work. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. If you missed yesterday's Newswave, I'll leave it up here in a card. Or maybe you wanted to hear more from Matt Piscatella at Circana about the gaming industry. I did kind of a mini podcast with him over the weekend, and I'll leave that right below. Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.